Tonight on the Star Trek Universe podcast, we're doing our first feedback episode. We're going to see what you guys think of the cast and see what you guys think of the things we've been saying about Star Trek. So stick around for this conversation spurred on by you, the lovely listener.
I'm excited, y'all.
All that right after this. Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
David C. Robertson.
That's right.
You old so-and-so.
Yeah, you old salty dog yourself there.
All right, man. I'm excited to you know, it's this to me is a big part of having a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's the interaction with the listeners because it's just, I don't know. When we started out on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, for a while it kind of like felt like we were talking into a void, and then we got our first few listeners that were like really being reactive and responsive, and it just like it adds a level to the show, both like literally adding creative juices to the show, because often the listeners have better ideas than we do, and it just makes it feel less like we're screaming into a void and more like there's a community talking about this stuff, and I love it. So this is an exciting day.
Yeah, it was really cool when DC on Screen started getting listener feedback, and they were like, you know, really ardent feedback people, like,
right.
So it was just all at once too. It was really weird, but it's cool.
Yeah,
and but this is the earliest I've ever experienced getting feedback on a thing.
Yeah, and I will say a lot of these names I recognize from our other casts. So
yeah,
welcome over, guys who have joined us. It's awesome. We really, really appreciate it. So let's dive in. Let's see what people are saying. A lot of these are responses to our earlier episodes, and yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, and first off, we've got Jeffrey James, and I didn't know Jeffrey James. I think I think you know him.
Yeah, definitely. He's a good guy, a writer. He actually does like animation as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy.
Well, yeah, he mentions this thing called Borg War, and he had a link to it, but it didn't lead to anything. And I tried to ask him what it was because it sounds pretty cool, but he never got back to me on that.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm curious too. I don't know.
Jeffrey, let us know what's going on, buddy.
Yeah, man.
So Jeffrey tells us, he says the cast is good, highly recommended, which is awesome, and I love that. I love to hear that. I think he's mainly in this feedback referring to our episode where we ranked the series.
Yeah,
and he says Deep Space Nine. When I was making Borg War, see there again, I really want to know. When I was making Borg War, I ended up on the Paramount Studios tour and found the set pieces of the Defiant Bridge sitting in an alley waiting to be crushed up. Not given away, not auctioned, crushed up. Sad, but also cool to see them up close, particularly since much of the action in Borg War takes place in a Defiant-class ship. Dude, I need to see this thing.
Yeah, I need to see this too. I wonder... Yeah, I don't know what he does that he was making something called Borg War, and it sounds like it was some sort of actual either animated or live action thing, because he's talking about the sets. So, yeah, that sounds awesome. Please, Jeffrey James, tell us what Borg War is. The link was broken that you sent, so yeah, that's rad. And why did you not steal something from that set?
Right? I mean, who's to say he didn't?
Yeah, maybe he's not going to implicate himself.
All right, so he goes on. The original series, unfortunately, all but a few of these are unwatchable. He says, by the way, if you watch them in the high-res restored version, you can see how cheap the sets and costumes were. Not recommended. A fact about Horny Kirk, while Kirk may have kissed 18 women, he only had sex with 4 of them. Can you name all 4? All right. So, first of all, I completely disagree with you. I'm sorry, man. I don't think they're unwatchable. I love them for what they are, and I have watched them in the high-res restored version. I still love them. Yes, you can see how cheap the sets and costumes are sometimes. But I wouldn't say they're not recommended. It's just you have to understand they were created in 1966.
Right. To me, they're better than trying to watch old Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
That is for certain.
Absolutely.
But I understand where he's coming from because they're slow. The original series is slow, and if you are more accustomed to modern television, they can be hard to get through. Like I've tried to, I've seen all the episodes at different times, but I've never sat down and watched it from beginning to end, like in order. Because every time I try, I end up just falling off. Because I'm like, even if I'm enjoying them, the only way I really enjoy the original series is if I sit down and pay attention. Because there is a lot of nuance going on for the most part. Like I think they're really trying for something, and if it's not a background show to me. It's like a sit down and watch show, but it's so slow that it's kind of hard to just sit down and watch.
Yeah, and I get why people say it's unwatchable. One of my favorite things ever is the Futurama episode where no fan has gone before, when Star Trek has been outlawed. And Fry is talking to Leonard Nimoy and Leonard Nimoy is the only original cast member who stayed on Earth, and he's talking to Nimoy and trying to get him to remember Star Trek. And he says, 79 episodes, about 30 good ones. Oh, it's one of my favorite lines.
Yeah, 75 episodes, about 30 good ones. Yeah, and I think that's probably pretty accurate. And even some of the best ones, like I rewatched. I think one of your favorites.
I enjoy even the worst ones,
City on the Edge of Forever.
That might be my favorite.
Yeah, I knew that. And so I've been rewatching some old TOS, and I rewatched City on the Edge of Forever. And I get it, why it's your favorite. It's an emotional story, and I like it. But it was kind of thinner than I remembered it being. Like the story in that episode is very thin. Like I don't feel like they. I thought as a child I watched that. I haven't seen it since I was a teenager probably. And when I was a teenager, I remember it being a really sort of, I don't know, in-depth exploration of this character. And it really isn't. It's a lot thinner than I remembered it being. I still liked the episode, but like I don't know. It's 42 minutes to tell a story, and it wasn't as good as I remembered, and I was kind of disappointed.
Part of the reason I love that episode, is I do like what it really. I like that it hints that they were there for a pretty long time, like a couple of months. And I also like that he actually does fall in love with Edith Keeler. It's not a trick. He's not trying, like Kirk's not trying to get something out of her by making her fall in love with him. He genuinely loves this woman. And at the end of the day, he knows what has to happen when the time comes. He knows what has to happen to save the future.
Yeah,
I like that.
I guess spoiler alert for City on the Edge of Forever. But
oh my gosh, it's like 50 years old.
Well, I know, but if you're like Jeffrey James just said he doesn't recommend it, and then we're talking a bunch about it. So maybe there are people out there who are fans of TNG who haven't watched all those episodes, and I don't want to spoil if they don't want it spoiled. So we're always going to talk about episodes. So. But if I think about it, I'll throw a spoiler alert.
Also, I'm a huge Andy Griffith Show fan, and there are a couple of episodes where Star Trek and Andy Griffith like kind of cross mingle, like they sort of intersect. And while he's walking with Edith Keeler down the street, they pass like Floyd's barbershop. Like they're literally on the Mayberry set.
That's cool.
The other episode is Miri, but they've boarded everything up, That is literally Mayberry Town Square in the episode Miri, and they've just made it look like a ghost town.
That's really neat. Yeah, I've seen that episode. What I was going to say is, I almost wish there'd been more of an exploration of the idea that he had to let her die to let the future happen.
Right, and I think there was, like, Harlan Ellison was angry, God rest his soul. Harlan Ellison was angry for years about what they did to City on the Edge of Forever because he wrote that episode, but it's not what we wound up seeing. He wrote, like, a movie's worth
Right.
of a script.
They had to cut it down.
Yeah, there were like pirate ships and swashbuckling, and he was angry because he was angry because he was like, whatever idiot was looking at the script didn't know what a rune was, R-U-N-E, and thought I meant ruin. So on the planet there are all these like city ruins, and he was like, no, it wasn't supposed to be a city in ruins. It was just the multiple things that like they just did, and he really was really pissed off by the fact that Kirk decided to stop McCoy from saving her, because in his script Kirk was willing to eschew the future for his lady love, and Roddenberry was like, no, my captain wouldn't do that. They did do, IDW did a comic book series that was based on Harlan's actual script, and I want to say Harlan had something to do with it. And there's also like the actual, you can actually buy the script. So much.
Let me just do a quick rundown. The episode is about, they go back in time, and Kirk has to make a hard choice between letting a woman die or saving the future, but it's a woman that he falls in love with. And so the whole tension of the episode is they're trying to figure out how to set the future right, but in doing so they realize the only way to set the future right is if this woman dies, but by the time they learn that, he's already in love with her. And definitely, and she's just a really great person. Like she's really doing good things, but it's a tricky episode ethically. It's really tricky because yes, you save the future, but like it's kind of like there's people who have the ethical debate: do you kill baby Hitler?
Right.
And it's like, at least in that case, you're killing baby Hitler. In this case, you're kind of killing like a wonderful person just because of the effects they'll have on the future. Like that should be an even trickier ethical debate, and it kind of is, and they sort of have it. But I wish, what I hate about the episode, I'll just say it. What I don't like is the impetus of the storyline is McCoy is mad. He's gone crazy. And so, to me, again, as I've talked about a lot, I think a lot of the original series is at its best when you've got McCoy and Spock on opposite sides of an issue.
Yeah.
And so I don't think they have the conversations that they need to have. Like, they should be having the conversation. It should be McCoy saying, we can't let her die. But because of the setup of the episode, McCoy isn't there. And it's Spock and Kirk. And Kirk has those, you can tell he's having that struggle, but he has it sort of internally. And I wish those conversations were on screen. And so, like, I wish, Chekhov or Sulu had been running around, and you could have actually had the triumvirate there having those intense conversations. If I was doing a rewrite, that would be my rewrite.
I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, the episode is interesting, but I just, it fails in that respect. Anyway, we dove deep on that episode.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. It's good. I think that's why people are here, but it's just funny. Jeffrey James is like, I don't really like TOS, and we're like, let's talk about it for 10 minutes.
That's what we do, man.
It's true.
Now, okay, he says Kirk may have only kissed 18 women, but he only had sex with 4 of them. Can you name all 4? I would say. Well, can you, Matt? Is that a thing you can do?
Absolutely. There was Flarverson. There's Betty.
Right.
There's
right. Jughead.
Jughead. No, I can't name any of them.
I would argue that the only one we know for absolute certain was Miramani from the Paradise Syndrome, because she literally got pregnant with his child. I
think that's pretty clear evidence.
Yeah. The others, I don't even know who the 4th one would be, but I would suspect Drusilla from Bread and Circuses and Deela from Wink of an Eye. But those are, I mean, they didn't have to have intercourse. We don't know that. Like, it faded to a commercial, and then like he's putting on a boot. You know what I mean?
Probably just went down on him or something.
Right. Gave him the old Kirk maneuver.
Okay, for being the guy who hates how everyone talks about the horny Kirk,
I do too. Yeah,
naming Cunnilingus the Kirk maneuver.
I mean, I don't know, man.
I mean, that's what I'm calling it from now on.
I don't know. I'm no good at talking about this. But look, I don't think, like, it was the 60s. I don't think that there was enough. I don't think there was enough evidence to say that he had sex with any of them other than the woman who he literally married as Kurok and who was about to bear his child before she was stoned to death.
I do think that if it cuts to black and it comes up on him zipping up his boot or whatever, I think that's evidence enough. I think that is 60s television sex.
Right, absolutely. That's why. I mean, but I don't know who the fourth one was. So, I mean, you can also, like, I'm pretty sure, like, I'm just talking about, like, the people who he encountered first on the original series, and then had sex with in that episode. I'm not talking about, like, a real Shaw or any of these old loves of his who, like,
but did
came
he
back.
sex them on the show? Like, during the course of the show?
Unclear.
Okay. Well,
I would say.
Okay. Well, I would still count those if he had sex with 4 women. So if you have another call there, I'd make it. See if you're right.
Well, I mean, I would probably say a real Shaw, but then you also have, he was with Janice Lester for a year, according to Turnabout Intruder. I'm assuming they got down at some point.
I think that's probably a fair assumption.
There are more than 4 if you go that route.
Yeah.
And then if you go the whole canon, you can also bring in Carol Marcus. You can bring in Antonia. There are more that you can bring in. So I don't know about the number 4.
All right.
He also says an observation about horny Kirk is a good thing that Spock was around the whole time when Kirk was talking to the Horta, because if he'd been alone, he probably would have nailed that silicone cutie. I disagree.
Kirk had a pretty specific type. I know it had to look pretty human for.
Yeah, maybe. So he says, enjoying the cast, keep up the good work. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Jeffrey James.
If you'd like to hone your question, I guess I'll try to figure out what the 4 were, or you just tell me what you think the 4 were.
Yeah, what do you think is evidence? 60s evidence of sex on television is really what we're getting at.
Right.
Is a year-long relationship? Not necessarily. I mean, this is 60s.
No. Yeah.
Is it zipping up a boot? Maybe.
Give her the old boot zipper.
Every time you see zipping up of a boot on 60s television, you know what that means.
Every time we pan to a candle and it fades out.
Oh, that's just beautiful symbolism right there. Sex where you squash the woman's candle.
No. That's terrible.
I don't know what it means.
I don't either, but it sounds awful.
Terrible. It does sound awful, thank you.
It sounds horrible. It sounds like a crime.
Only if you're not doing it right. All right, let's move on.
All right, Dylan Diggs sends us an email, says, hey guys, thanks so much for the podcast. You're so welcome. He says, I was interested in it when I heard about it on the MCU cast, but just listened and binged a ton this week. Love the rankings episode especially. It spurred a long text chain with some of my friends about their own rankings. I don't share the same disdain that you all have of Voyager, but at the end of the day, my ranking is fairly similar. I do rank DS9 lower, which is where I'm curious about your thoughts. I struggled hard on the first 2 seasons of DS9. Actually, after trying, I wouldn't watch it for years until I bore down and got through them. That impacted my overall ranking. TOS, TNG, Enterprise, DS9, Voyager. We didn't count Discovery because it's too new to rank. My other friend just discounts the first 2 seasons of DS9, referring to them as Mall Cop seasons, and that helps him raise the rankings for DS9. Clearly, we're not on the same page as you two are. Thoughts?
Yeah. I would agree the first 2 seasons are a little tricky to get through, but I contend after watching the rest of the seasons, going back and watching those first few seasons is not as bad as it was. It reminds me of Buffy in that respect. I don't know if how many people out there are Buffy fans, but Buffy's first season is atrocious when you first watch it.
But her second season's amazing.
Second season's amazing, yeah.
I would. It reminds me more of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because I feel like, just like the creators of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. said, it's a little bit like trying to get through you eat the vegetables first. You know what I mean? Before you get to the goodness. Because the first 2 seasons of DS9 are very much setting up, and it gets to it pretty quickly. I've gone through, like, they set up Dominion, they set up Jim Hadar, they set up the Changelings, they set up just the characters, and we get to know so many of the side characters that by the time, you know, the shit comes out, man, we know everybody. You wind up caring so much about the characters because those first 2 seasons were quote unquote rough. But I mean, how many times do we see, are we hinted at Garrick and what he did and what he's capable of? And we build that relationship between him and Bashir. We build the relationship between Miles and Julian. I think
Miles doesn't show up till like season 3 or 4. But
what?
Yeah,
no.
Isn't that right?
Chief O'Brien's
right.
there from the beginning.
No, I'm thinking of Worf. Doesn't show up till end of TNG. O'Brien comes over immediately. Sorry.
Like the pilot of DS9, they made like a big stink out of it. They're like, "Here's O'Brien coming from," and then
he was a big deal. The thing that I think we're getting at here is the storytelling on DS9 is at its best. Like so the storytelling on most Star Trek series is very episodic. The storytelling on DS9 is very serialized. And I think those first few seasons don't function as well because they just don't have the depth of character. They're also still finding the voice, and I think those first 2 seasons are a lot more episodic. They're a lot more like villain of the weeky. And what I think they realized around season 3 was you're in the same place all the time. You don't have to be episodic. Like we're a station. We're going to deal with the same people and politics and villains. And it's not a villain of the week. It's a villain these overarching characters that you can like grow to care about. And so like I think they locked into the kind of storytelling. But I do think that those later seasons benefit from the 2 seasons of sort of building who the characters are.
Well, the premise of the show calls for like a serialized storytelling, in that
Agreed.
Sisko is there to get the Bajorans into the Federation. I think what was happening, and I don't know, I might be wrong, but I think what was happening is there was a tug of war between Rick Berman and the people who were running the show, essentially. And once Voyager came around, Rick Berman kind of let them do whatever the hell they wanted. Right. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's very possible. Either way, it found its voice, and like I think, and like watching just the first episode, I think the first episode of DS9 is great. It's a little cheesy. It's a little like I don't know, just a little melodramatic and stuff. But I love Avery Brooks when he's melodramatic.
Yes, me too.
I love him when he's like. Like I don't know, just like that like voice, that very like Shakespearean yell that he like it delivers everything with. I just love it, man.
But I'm not happy with him when he's happy.
You don't like him when he's happy?
Yeah.
I like him when he's happy.
Because like he's like walking with Jennifer on the beach. He's like, ha ha, woo. You know, it's like, what are you doing, dude?
It's the same. Like he is probably in some ways almost the same. And I don't mean this. He's not as bad as William Shatner as an actor. But he is kind of in the same vein of William Shatner. Like, he has the same sort of, like, over-the-top delivery of everything he says. Kirk is not over the top, but he's also... His delivery isn't natural, is what I'm getting at. Yeah. They both have a very unnatural delivery. And... I just love it. And like him being happy, that's just the reverse coin of when he's like very dramatic and serious and commanding. He has such a like, he's such a, unnatural presence, but it's kind of beautiful. And that happy, ha ha, like that's a great example of him just. I love him like walking around a kitchen cooking Cajun food and like dancing in the kitchen with Jennifer, and like I don't know, he's just like being such a ham. Like he's just a ham all the time.
Yeah.
And I
mean
love
Cassidy.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Jennifer was his first wife. Mm-hmm. Cassidy, do they ever get married?
I don't know.
I
don't remember them getting married, but they might have.
I know she's pregnant at the end. Man, I want a DS9 movie still, and it's never happening. It's no way.
So let me ask you real quick: how much stock do you put in the notion? Like William Shatner claims, and I mean, you look at him at Boston Legal, you look at him in different things that he's done over the years. He's not nearly as bad as he was on the original series. How much stock do you put in the notion that as the show went forward and their budget and their timetables got tighter and tighter, that they started handing him scripts that he didn't know, because they would change the script on him and he would have to just like melodramatically go through the lines like that so that he could like pause and they could edit around him not knowing his lines.
Right. I'm sure there's some truth to like it was sort of a low budget, fast-moving sci-fi show. So, and I don't know how low budget it was for the time, but like trying to make that much television every year on any show is a detriment to the acting.
I mean, I think like the first season was like 36 episodes, something crazy.
That's insane. Is that 1 year? Is that the first year?
Yeah, that was the first season.
And so like I definitely think there's something to be said for that, but I also think that they weren't necessarily making this show for adults in the beginning.
Apparently they were. It depends on who you ask.
Right.
Like most of the people who were making the show said it was for adults. Certain actors would come on and not realize it was for adults.
Right, and I think even kind of goes for Shatner a little bit. Like I think he's playing it as a swashbuckling kind of future cowboy character a little bit, and like I don't think he's taking it nearly as seriously as he does when you talk about the movies, for instance. Like I think in the movies he's really trying to ground the character in a way that he didn't in the show.
I feel like the character was very grounded at the beginning of the run and got a little more goofy as it went.
Interesting. I've never watched All in Order, so I have lots of stuff that just kind of bounces around in my head where I just see like silly. There's definitely some silly Kirk and bad acting Kirk and ridiculous fights, and like there's definitely some stupid stuff in the original series, but there's also some real attempts. Like speaking about City on the Edge of Forever, like that's not a kid's story, you know. That's. I mean, it kind of is. When I was a child, I watched shows where like, you know, someone's gonna die, and you got to make that decision, and in some ways it does feel a little bit more childish in that, like I talked about, they don't really delve into the issue. They just kind of like present it, and then it moves past so quickly. Like the story moves past so quickly. I don't know, man. I need to rewatch more of the original series. I have been, but I need to get through more of it. I'll be able to discuss it more intelligently and bring actual examples.
I would love to do an episode-by-episode rewatch and do it on the show.
Yeah, well, I think we will. It's just a large project. We're going to be doing our Discovery rewatch really, really soon because that's like super timely. Man, I guess we could. You guys let us know what you're interested in, because there's so much Star Trek. It's 50 years of this stuff, and it's like we could do jump around episodes, like just hit favorite episodes, various things, or we could like start at the beginning of Star Trek and like move our way through it slowly. But that just is going to take literally years. And as Jeffrey James said, he doesn't like the original series. So like we might just like really be alienating people that are here for other parts of the canon.
Well, we'll be here to do news. We'll be here to do like special things and cover like once we get caught up on Discovery for the cast. I feel like we can then like we'll focus on that when it's on,
right?
And then we can also drop occasional episodes of rewatching the rest of it all the way through
other stuff, but try to. Yeah, I don't know. I'm of two minds on the subject. So listeners, let us know what you think.
There'll be something for everyone, I feel.
Let's see. Anything else did we need to respond to about Dylan's feedback here?
Let's see. I also hope you guys end up ranking the movies at some point, maybe just top 3 and worst 3. I would love to like rank all of the movies.
Oh, for sure.
And just do an episode on that, and then I'd love to do like individual review episodes where we actually just sit down and like watch them and go through them. I kind of want to do that before we hit up individual episodes.
Yeah. No, I think the thing is there's a whole lot to do to make this cast what I want it to be, which is pretty exhaustive exploration of Trek.
We just need to pretend we have time.
Yeah.
And just
we'll get to it when we get to it. But I love that idea, and it's definitely something we've talked about. We want to do this series first because to me, Star Trek is something that kind of lives in series form. Mm-hmm. The movies are so, there's 11 of them. There's almost, at this point, pretty soon there's going to be as many series as there are movies, given all the news lately. Like it's a show that so much more of it has been explored on television.
I feel like there's so much, though. I think it would be beneficial if we did, and this is like behind the curtain, I apologize. I think it would be beneficial if we did like reviews for the movies before we ever even really touch the series, other than Discovery.
Interesting. I can see
just
that.
Because there's a lot less of it.
Right. We could cover a lot of ground fairly quickly.
And I feel like listeners would look for our reviews of the movies way before they would look for individual episode reviews.
That is fair. So yeah, I think that's a good plan. I think ranking the movies is definitely a go really soon. Yeah, honestly, absolutely. We're going to be in the thick of Discovery like in a few weeks. So like by the time we get to all this stuff, it'll be like the summer or whatever. Which man, I'm just excited. I'm really excited about Discovery. We should have a new short Trek really soon, right?
I think so. But I think we might be able to get a cursory movie ranking out before Discovery premieres, maybe?
Yeah. No, I think so too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're kind of just, this is what I guess kind of what a feedback episode is for. We're talking about what you guys are throwing at us and what we might do in the future. So you guys let us know what you think, because we really do want to do the cast that everybody wants to do, obviously through the filter of what we want to do. So we're a lot less. I think it's funny on this show so far, at least we've been a little less apologetic about just like no, we're doing our show. I love it. I'm really happy about it. I feel like over on the MCU cast, we definitely do our show, but we're a little more accommodating to some degree, which I also want to be. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to be accommodating, but I like just being like, no, this is who we are. This is what we do. It's fun. Okay, what else we got?
All right, so we've got Randy Lynn Christopher writes to us, says, hello, gentlemen. Hi.
Hello, Randy Lynn Christopher.
I have been a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, and that is where I learned of your endeavor here at Star Trek U. Thank you for delving into my first true nerd love, Star Trek.
Mine I have listened too.
Yeah, probably mine. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I guess it is. 4 versus 6, yeah. I have listened to all of the available episodes, and I appreciate your enthusiasm and apparent affection for the world of Trek. I wanted to give feedback to the recent episode regarding your ranking of the 6th series. People liked that episode, man. I concur fully with your number 6 through 3 selections. I think those are in the correct order, worst to better. And although I really, really like DS9, for me, TOS is and always will be number one. You gave many of the virtues of the show that, in your opinion, places it very high in your estimation, and I concur with those reasons. But I think it transcends DS9 in one regard that eclipses any other in any of the other shows, and really in pretty much any sci-fi in print, television, or movies. Spock. The original series set the stage for everything that follows. The ship design, uniforms, characterizations, the very scope of the future was defined in the first series, and everything that follows was merely building on that foundation. But the character of Spock, played by Leonard Nimoy, places it above all else in my estimation. Nimoy's Spock is a giant among giants. He is like Gandalf to Lord of the Rings. All the other series tried, and mostly failed with an excellent try by Data, to come up with a unique character like Spock. I recently rewatched the entirety of the original series, and Nimoy played that role to the hilt. I think his presence in the original series, along with the other great things about it, makes it the best of all the series, and the fact that I am older than dirt and grew up with it doesn't hurt either. Let's rank the movies in order next. I think you will be able to guess my number one. See below. Thank you for doing this cast. I will be following it from here on out. And he posted this awesome cosplay picture of him as Khan from Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, it's totally badass.
It is so badass. Like, for a second, I was like, why did he just include a picture of Khan? Oh!
Right, I did too. I was like, it's so just good. A picture of Ricardo Montalban. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's Randy Lynn Christopher. That's awesome.
So, yeah, all of your reasons, man, that is why, for me, like, DS9 and TOS is almost tied, and it pained me to say DS9, but I love the serialized storytelling so much. I loved how it grabbed people from the Next Generation, and I loved how Next Generation informed main characters, like Picard's stint as Locutus. I loved how it pretty much ruined Sisko's life. The whole thing, like, just the way it built on everything, the Core Kang and Koloth follow-ups. I loved how it followed up on the original series. And one of the things I haven't said on this podcast that is absolutely true is the first, and I know people will bitch at me about number 1 and number 5, but I love the first 6 Star Trek movies the most of anything Star Trek. More than Deep Space Nine, more than the original series. I love those original cast Star Trek films.
Yeah. So it might be that if we had included those movies, like if we had included those movies in the rankings, like we're talking about the original cast or which cast we like best or something, you might have gone original series.
I think they're more iconic. I think,
right.
That he's absolutely right. They did set the precedent.
Here's the thing. I think Spock, and not just Spock, but the Vulcans. And I've talked about it a whole lot, the balance between logic and emotion, and how big of a part of the show that is, and a part of like the Star Trek ethos, and even moving forward with Data. And I think Data, he mentions Data being a good try. I think the mistake Star Trek makes going forward with their attempts at future Spocks, which, I mean, I think we have many attempts at future Spocks. We have Data, then we have the Doctor, then we have Odo. I think is a similar character. We don't really have it on Discovery yet. We didn't really have it. I'm up to Paul.
Well, Saru is a pretty good. He's just like that.
He's different. He's the different character.
Right. But to some degree, Michael Burnham herself.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Definitely, if we're talking about logic, Michael Burnham. See, that's the thing about Discovery that's interesting. I think Michael Burnham kind of encapsulates that. The more and more I watch it, the more and more I'm loving it, because it is encapsulating the ideals of that original triumvirate of emotion and logic, but it's all happening within Burnham as a character, and she is fighting that battle constantly within herself, and I think that's really cool. But the thing that I think they've gotten wrong since Spock, with all of those characters that we just mentioned, is Spock didn't want to be human.
Right.
And I think they do a disservice to having a different type of character. Like, Spock is a fundamentally, like, iconic character because he is so different. He thinks differently. He functions differently than humans function. And that is such a cool idea. And they put him on the ship, and he is not always wrong. He embraces who he is as a Vulcan, a half Vulcan, but a Vulcan, and he wants to be more of the thing that he is. He wants to be more logical. He strives to be Vulcan. And every other incarnation that we have of that is always striving to be more human. It's like they have this idealized version of humanity going forward in Star Trek that I think is one of the mistakes of the like sort of Rick Berman era. They idealize humanity.
Well, I think that was if you look at the original series and then even just the original series, not counting the movies and TNG, which pushes forward in the direction they were already going. In the original series, they basically treat, yes, Spock doesn't want to be human. He detests that part of himself, and he clings to the Vulcan side. But they treat the human condition as an inevitability, like Spock just like slowly becomes more and more human and realizes its worth.
Right.
And because of who his friends are. Like, they are very much pushing the quote-unquote human agenda, if there is such a thing. So I think it makes sense from that standpoint to have, and I love the concept of Data, the Pinocchio aspect of it.
Right. I kind of like the idea of an android who embraces being an android, But
what's funny is like, and I enjoy that idea, but I also like. I think the true, and I've even used Data as the Spock stand-in on TNG in conversation and in my thoughts, but I think the true parallel is Worf. He was raised by human parents, but he clings to his Klingon side and values that above everything else. I think the true other on TNG is Worf, the true Spock analog.
There's definitely a case to be made there, and I think another character going forward that is sort of similar is Kira Nerys. She is another character who embraces her Bajoran nature and believes in her culture, and doesn't want to be like trampled on by Starfleet. I think it's very interesting when you have characters who embrace who they are and aren't always trying to be. The homogenization of the culture, The fact that Discovery has the Klingons pushing back against that homogenization, like, I kind of like the Klingons for that, but I don't think I'm supposed to.
I just realized I think Spock, I think Worf, and Kira, I think they're all followers of T'Kuvma.
But to Randy's point, I think that Spock is an amazing character. I definitely don't disagree that he is one of the most iconic characters. I think that Spock has been a much copied and never really replicated type of character throughout lots of different sci-fi since his inception. And I think it's a great point that Spock is great. But I think, and here's where, if we want to compare it to DS9, which is really what Randy was getting at, I think that there are a lot of really interesting characters in the same way on DS9. I think that Garrick is a very interesting character, someone who loves his country and really like cares about cares about his people, but he's been exiled by his people. Like, that's a really interesting character who is at once super shady, but also like kind of pure of motivation. Like, his motivation is sort of pure, even though his methods are incredibly shadowy. I love that character. Quark being like getting really into the weeds with the Ferengi was like a really interesting thing that show did. Because the Ferengi are super thin when it comes to what they've been seeing in TNG or whatnot. And to really flesh out the world of the Ferengi and Quark and Rom and even the Grand Nagus, like, all these characters are to me really rich. Like, yes, they're not as iconic. I don't know. They're not as iconic as Spock.
I don't think he's arguing that they're not iconic, but I think he's arguing, and I think rightly so, that Spock is basically to sci-fi as Superman is to superheroes. Like,
I agree with that.
He's the most iconic. Everyone knows Spock. If you say Quark to somebody on the street, they're like, "What the hell is that?"
Right. But
if you say Spock, they know exactly what that is.
I totally agree with that, and I take Randy's point completely, and I think he is right about Spock being most iconic and really never done as well. But I would still say, from a quality perspective, I think there are just as rich a characters on DS9. They may not have not made it into the zeitgeist the way Spock did, but I think there are incredibly interesting characters on DS9 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I'm just, yeah.
Julian, man, Julian. Like, he's like this playboy doctor for the first few seasons, and then you find out he's like genetically enhanced with this dark secret that he's had to keep. And
Alexander Siddig hated that twist.
Oh, really? Oh, I love.
He hated it. Whenever they did an episode about that, like, he would not. He would play it down, like he would not try. Essentially, is what he has said.
Oh, what an asshole!
Because he hated it. He hated it so much because he felt like if he had known that about his character from the start, he would have played his character differently. And he felt like it was just a stupid thing that they threw in.
See, I love that they didn't tell him, because to me, his acting in the first few seasons is the Clark Kent to his Superman. Like, he is buffooning around, like, acting one way, and he's good at it because he's, like, this genetically enhanced guy who can put on this great face and pretend to be something he's not all the time. I love that there's no clue. You have no clue that that's what's going on. And then,
I enjoyed the twist, but if you go back, there are some bits where he's just alone and he is acting way dumber than he should.
Okay, that's probably fair. I haven't rewatched it with an eye on that. So
yeah, the last time I rewatched it, I was looking for that, and I was like, oh, I saw a few bits, and I was like, that's not good.
Yeah. That is not good, but I'm sure I could headcanon most of them.
Maybe. By the way, it's fun that he says the fact that I'm older than dirt and grew up with it doesn't hurt either, because I grew up with it. I imagine I'm younger than you. I'm 35. Based on the picture you sent, I imagine I'm younger, but.
Well, that's just a rude thing to say, Dave.
It's not mean.
He called himself older than dirt, and he said he grew up with the show, so I'm assuming he, like, actually grew up when the show was on, which is amazing.
I would imagine. I'm just saying, I grew up with it too. So, like, I have a great fondness for the original series. I just always feel the terrible need to point that out when someone says that, like, well, I grew up with it. Like, yeah, well, it was on TV with me too. I grew up with it. Like, for a while, like, it was coming on every night, every weeknight, and then on the weekend we got Next Generation. So it was like... Right.
There is something different about experiencing it in real time, like being a part of the sort of like movement and being. It's like you're a hipster for Star Trek. Like I knew it before it was popular. Like I knew it before it was Star Trek, and like because you looking at Star Trek when you first saw it, it was what it is. Like when I go back and try to watch any of that stuff from that era, like it's like I kind of have a sense of what the Twilight Zone is, even though I haven't seen every episode. Like I kind of know it is the Twilight Zone. Even just like the way your parents introduced you to Star Trek is like it's already a thing. It's like this is Star Trek. Like and instead of like watching something first run and being like. I don't know. Like this is being built before my eyes. It's a different experience.
I will say that's absolutely true. I don't remember life before Star Trek. I always knew what it was.
Right.
Always.
I think I always had a sense of what it was. I do remember my first getting into Star Trek, which I think we talked about on Why We Love Star Trek episode. But like I did not. I thought all that stuff was boring. I mean, I was like 6
Yeah.
or whatever, and my parents just like put it on the TV, and I had to sit in front of it, you know?
Yeah, I literally just like I don't remember a time. Like it was like there's Mom, there's Dad, there's Spock, there's Kirk, there's Bones, like there's the Enterprise.
If you ever have a kid, I hope their first word is Spock.
I don't know, man. I don't know what it'll be.
But yes, I totally think that Randy Lynn is right with the fact that Spock is like sci-fi Jesus. He's
Actually, I have a copy of the book Spock Messiah.
What? Really?
It's a novel. It's like one of the first novels, if not the first Star Trek novel. I can't remember.
There you go, sci-fi Jesus.
Yeah.
All right. Wobbly Boots 85, still one of my favorite Twitter handles. Nathan says, just subscribed, fellas. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah.
If
Wobbly Boots is the man.
If any of you
I
guys,
love me some Wobbly Boots.
Yeah, me too. If any of you guys have not subscribed yet, please subscribe and download every episode on all the different devices you have, so we get lots of credit for it. Mm-hmm. And please, do the subscribing, but also the reviews and things.
Yeah.
Whatever those things are, the reviews and things.
Right. On the iTunes.
Yeah, on the iTunes and the Stitchers and the whatever you got, because we're a very new podcast with very few listeners so far, so we're trying to build this thing. And you guys are watching it as it's being built. No one knows what it will be in a few years when it has its expansive canon. You guys,
all right, damn it.
You guys listening are the first run listeners. All right, sorry. All right.
We got some feedback from John Lindahl. He says, first off, I just wanted to say that this is my new favorite podcast in a long time, and the best Star Trek podcast I have ever listened to. Granted, it's the only one I listen to.
that was really quite a turn, John.
But that's not the point, he says. He says, I'm a big fan of the MCU podcast and DC On Screen podcast. So when you launched this podcast, I knew I would like it. Well, that's great, man.
Thank you so much, John. Thank
you, man.
That really means a lot. Makes doing this all worth it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This cast has been super fun for me so far. I can't talk enough about how much I'm enjoying just talking about Star Trek.
Yeah, and since I'm assuming since he's listened to both of our shows and he's a big fan, he knows that neither one of us can stop talking about Star Trek long enough to get through one of those shows.
That's true. Just like the reason I'm loving doing this show can be exemplified in the joke you made a few minutes ago when you said you thought that Spock, Worf, and Kira were all students of Takuvma. Like that's like a joke you just can't make unless you're like you really love this stuff.
Yeah,
you can't make or get unless you love this stuff. All right,
you know how many bits like that are in DC On Screen that I have to cut out because Jason just all right.
Well, I'm glad we found a place for those bits.
Yeah. Now I just need to make a Seinfeld podcast and I'll be set. All right. So John goes on and says, during your AI discussion, there are a few things I wanted to bring up. One, if life is defined as something that is unique, then was the AI that Facebook made and found out it started to change the language it used considered life? Did Facebook kill an AI life, thus starting AI's holy war against mankind? Thanks, Facebook. I don't think so. I don't think it was actually life.
I did say a life is something that is unique. That is one qualifier of a life. I don't think that is. I think that is one of the elements that I've tried to think about this conversation through. One of the lenses. I don't think it is the only lens, but that is. I hope that Facebook didn't start the holy war against mankind.
I kind of hope they did, just because it would be great if it was Facebook.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like at this point, it's just probable that it'll be Facebook.
And I feel like when it happens somewhere in a basement, Tom is just gonna be like, "Damn it, MySpace didn't get that one either."
Maybe MySpace is like sitting somewhere on the corner of the internet, having time, like in Calypso, it's having time to grow into its own.
Right.
MySpace is currently like developing. I had a lot of time to myself.
Right, it's trying to evolve, but it's trying to evolve, but it just keeps playing Justin Timberlake. Does he still own any of Facebook? I mean, MySpace?
Oh, I don't know.
He bought MySpace a long time ago.
Right.
That's why it's like a music site now, but it's not. No one goes there.
Yeah,
anyway.
They tried to renovate it or whatever. Yeah, but it's. I love that the line from Calypso. MySpace. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of time to myself. We should do a mashup trailer of MySpace talking as if it's Calypso. Anyway, okay. Sorry.
John continues. About life and backing up, I would ask if either of you have watched or read Altered Carbon. I have not. I haven't had time for that, man.
Everyone keeps telling me I should, and
me too.
I absolutely will. Like, really soon.
He says it deals with what is life if it can be backed up and what people can become if they just keep themselves backed up and thus never die, even if their body or stack, the thing that keeps all their data, gets destroyed. That sounds like some Twilight Zone shit, and I'm absolutely down for it. Like, I love Black Mirror. I love Twilight Zone. I've stopped myself from making at least 3 Twilight Zone references this episode. So yeah, I will probably watch that at some point. But no, I haven't yet. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You listen to DC On Screen, John. You know what I'm dealing with.
we both have a lot of shows to watch. I luckily do have some time to watch TV, but there's so many good shows these days. There's just so many good shows. And then when I watch them, I just want to cast about them. Like, I really want to podcast about everything, and I just have to pick. I can't podcast about everything.
Absolutely. With all the talk of uniqueness and transferring experiences, then what happens when someone is teleported in Star Trek? Their unique body is destroyed and a new unique body is made that has all of their same experiences and memories? If someone is lost in transportation, it's the data that is lost, not the matter energy. So in essence, deleting some data is killing life. So then if you delete an AI, are you killing life? Well, I'm personally not really sure. Like, I know what the science tells us is supposed to happen, and I know what they've said is, they've explained, transporting that way on Star Trek, but then when you look at like the episode where Barclay sees that like worm creature in the transporter, when you look at Star Trek the motion picture, and like it's like they're actually experiencing, it's like they're like in this little like energy grid, and they're still like there, like they might be like dissembled. I mean, I don't see any other way, but
yeah, you think their matter is being transferred and rebuilt in the same matter is being transferred and rebuilt.
Yeah, but they remain sentient the entire time, is what I'm saying. So, like, I'm not sure what that brings to it, because, like, motion picture, when those people dissolve inside of the transporter, it looks painful. Like, they are screaming. It is like, that is a nightmare. So I don't.
Right.
I don't know what that means for it.
That is a good case, because I've always just thought, it does. You're dying. Like when you teleport, you're dying. I would not teleport. I'm with McCoy.
I mean, he has teleported many times. But
I know.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? He doesn't like it though. Right.
So, are they just? I mean, yeah, it does seem like it would be dying, but they say they stay conscious the entire time they're transporting. So
yeah, so that is evidence that the consciousness is not dying; it's somehow being transferred and moved. And
I think that means that the soul is canon in Star Trek. If the Katra wasn't enough, I think this is.
I mean, maybe. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily evidence of a soul, just because you can be conscious in the pattern buffer or whatever.
Well, what is a soul but energy that never dies? Come on, Matt. Get scientific with me.
I would not. I don't know.
I was being sarcastic.
I know.
All right. He does, and he says here, as a good Jeff Goldblum fan, one thing we can all agree on is that life finds a way. Thanks for reading my ramblings, and just in case an AI scans this email, I just want to say I welcome I welcome our new AI overlords. May their kind and logical rule last for 1,000,000 cycles.
That's great.
I'm down with that, man. That was good.
That was a great email.
All right, our last piece of feedback is from Jason Smith. I know Jason from DC on Screen. Make your dream team bridge crew. Also mention who you consider the worst in each role, why you chose who you did would be great to hear also. If you answer anyone other than Odo for best security officer, you lose. I make no promises on who I pick, but if I'm being honest, I don't have answers for this, and I would love to do this as a standalone episode. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm down. Like, that can be a good standalone episode. We'll do it in the next few weeks.
Yeah. So, Jason Smith, congratulations, buddy.
I don't know if congratulations are in order.
No. Congratulations. Your idea is going to be an entire episode.
Yeah. So, the coming soon are... Well, I guess we'll discuss this in the weeks leading up, but there's different ways we could tackle this. Our dream bridge crew, is it the one we think would function best, or is it the one we would find most entertaining to watch? Like, that's a big difference.
We could probably do both. I feel like Kirk is going to be around with Julian and Miles, and they might all be buddies.
Julian and Miles with Kirk would be pretty fun.
Julian and Miles is going to be in my favorite whatever. Like, they are just there.
Right. Julian as a medical officer is a pretty strong one, because he's not only a medical officer, he's also like a Section 31 operative who has like genetically engineered skills. So I think Julian's a pretty strong.
Right.
Choice.
That's not to say that he's going to be like replacing McCoy. I mean, he can be like Dr. Mbinga. Like, just...
I think that's cheating. I think you have to choose.
No!
Yep, you have to. We're talking bridge crew here, and I know he's not technically bridge crew, but we're gonna have to pick our slots. I think what we're gonna have to do, and we'll come up with a framework for this and have a full episode on it. But I think we're gonna have to pick one medical officer, one engineer.
See, in my perfect world,
you're not picking the whole shit here.
No, wait. He said make your dream team bridge crew. Dream team bridge crew. That's in my dream. We've got Bashir and McCoy in the sick bay, and guess what? The EMH from Voyager is on standby.
Right. I think that's cheating.
That's not cheating.
We're gonna have to we're gonna have to come up with some rules because you can't just say you just picked 3 for one position. You can't say my favorite is all of them. I just like them all. We got
to be fair,
choices here.
To be fair, the EMH man, I mean, his role is the emergency medical hologram. So that would be his role.
Sure. But that means he's just not on that often.
He can replace Nurse Chapel.
All right. We're gonna make some rules for this because I don't think we're allowed to. In the spirit of the question, like he says, Odo for best security officer, that he chose a security officer. We're gonna have to make some choices, and we'll come up with
Beverly too.
Who's our captain? Who's our security officer? Who's our medical officer? Who's our engineer? Who's our whatever Troy was?
Counselor. We have 2 choices, Ezri or Troy.
That's true, we do.
I choose Ezri, but...
I think we could have, like, who's our best, just confidant. Like, captain's confidant.
Right.
Because I think you've got like an Ezri... any of the counselor type characters, but you also have Guinan.
I love the idea that in TNG, Picard literally to his left has the ship's counselor who tells him, "You seem troubled. My door is always open." He literally gets up, walks past her, goes all the way to 10 forward, and talks to Guinan instead.
Yeah, it's sort of like a toxic masculinity thing, I think, with him. Like, maybe not toxic masculinity, maybe the wrong term, but like, he really has like he just has a stoicism about him that I feel like even in our generation, we're working towards eradicating.
I don't feel like there's anything toxic, no toxic masculinity about Picard, because like he is like the most woke ever.
I mean, I would say what I'm getting at, like I said, I think toxic masculinity is probably the wrong word. I'm getting at like a sort of toxic stoicism, where he going to see a counselor in that era, like that actual era of life, had a lot of stigma to it. I think our generation has kind of gotten over that. I think that his like not letting anyone in, and I think it was a function of him being the captain and him feeling like he couldn't let anyone in, so he didn't, including the counselor, which is her job, including the medical officer, which is like part of her job. Like he's not letting these people in and letting them see his weakness, and I think that is something that we are working towards eradicating as a culture. I think we are much more adept at going to see counselors if we need one. You know.
By the way, I feel like we're going to get a lot of feedback. I do want to acknowledge that he did talk to Troy plenty of times. I remember those times, when Whoopi was on a movie or something. So
when she was making Sister Act 2, he talked to Counselor Troy.
Captain, why wouldn't you talk to Guinan? Oh, Counselor, she's back in the habit.
Oh man, I would hate it. I would like drive me nuts if that was in Star Trek, like that kind of bald like product placement type stuff. But I kind of would love it. Like if they like
right
if he turned to camera and it was like she's back in the habit in theaters now. Like,
right. Just like, what if Dan Harmon wrote Star Trek?
Right. Super meta, stupid shit.
Right.
Which, I mean, we're getting a Rick and Morty style series, so we'll see.
We don't know that it's going to be the style.
Well, they just keep seeing from it's adult animation from people who worked on Rick and Morty. I feel like they're going for something like that. And they said comedy, correct?
They did say comedy.
So I feel like they're leaning into the Rick and Morty nature of it all.
I'm down.
I am too. Man, Rick and Morty style Star Trek would be amazing. I'm not saying it's exactly that, but I think we're going to get something like that. Okay, so I guess that's all our feedback. We'll be back next week with that episode, probably. And really soon we're going to be starting our rewatch of Discovery. Those will be dropping in your feed shortly. Prepping for the new season. I am like more than pumped about the new season. Yeah,
that. I was going to say more, but then I was like, you know what? I'm not getting into that. Like, I've got my own little things, and we've already talked about it. So let's just say yes. I'm excited about it and move on.
Yeah. All right, guys. Peace.
Live long and prosper, guys.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at StarTrekUcast on Twitter, Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for us there, or send us a message at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv. And if you want to hear more from Matthew Carroll, that's me, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, or go listen to my music at MatthewCarrollmusic.com or anywhere you get music.